17 beloved TV stars of the 60s, 90s. What happened after fame? Then and now, 2026. They once ruled American television, filling millions of living rooms with unforgettable characters, charm, and drama. But decades later, some are still thriving, while others faced heartbreaking turns no fan expected. What really happened after the cameras stopped? Stay with us and subscribe to Classic Hollywood Legends for more unforgettable television stories. Robert Urich. Robert Urich became one of television's most familiar leading men during the late 1970s and 1980s. Born in Toronto, Ohio, in 1946, he initially studied communications before pursuing acting. After early roles in Swayze and soap, his breakthrough came as private investigator Dan Tana in Vega Thrillers, which ran from 1978 to 1981. His success continued with Spencer in Spencer for Hire, another detective role that became closely associated with him. Urich later showed a different side as Jake Spoon in the acclaimed miniseries Lonesome Dove. Over roughly 3 decades, he worked across numerous television series rather than depending on a single hit. Which Robert Urich role do you remember most? Dan Tana Spencer or Jake Spoon? His life changed dramatically in 1996 when doctors diagnosed him with synovial sarcoma, a rare form of cancer. Urich underwent surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation, and the disease went into remission. He and his wife, actress Heather Menzies Urich, also helped establish a fund supporting sarcoma research. Remarkably, Urich continued acting during and after treatment. His television movie Night of the Wolf premiered on April 15, 2002. One day later, on April 16, Urich died at a hospital in Thousand Oaks, California. Bill Bixby. Before the green skin and torn shirts appeared. The Incredible Hulk was often at its most human when Bill Bixby was alone on screen. As Dr. David Banner, he played the scientist less like a superhero and more like a weary man struggling to control something inside him. That sympathetic quality was already familiar from My Favorite Martian and The Courtship of Eddie's Father. Bixby moved easily between comedy, drama, and directing. As widowed father Tom Corbett in The Courtship of Eddie's Father, he earned a 1971 Emmy nomination and also began directing episodes. Years later, The Incredible Hulk paired his restrained performance with Lou Ferrigno's physical transformation, creating one of television's most recognizable versions of the Marvel character. Do you remember Bill Bixby more as David Banner or as the warm-hearted father from The Courtship of Eddie's Father? Away from television, his life became painfully difficult. His only son, Christopher, died in 1981 at age 6 from a throat infection. Less than a year later, Bixby's former wife and Christopher's mother, actress Brenda Bennett, died by suicide. Bixby was diagnosed with prostate cancer in the early 1990s, but continued working increasingly as a television director. He died at his Century City home on November 21, 1993, at 59. What made Bixby memorable was not spectacle. It was the calm intelligence and vulnerability he brought to ordinary men facing extraordinary circumstances, a quality that still gives his work unusual warmth decades later. David Janssen. David Janssen was a familiar face of American television long before his life ended unexpectedly at just 48. But one role permanently defined him: Dr. Richard Kimball in ABC's The Fugitive, the physician wrongly convicted of murdering his wife and forced to spend years running while searching for the real killer. From 1963 to 1967, Janssen carried the series largely through restraint. Kimball was rarely a conventional action hero. He looked exhausted, guarded, and constantly aware that one mistake could expose him. Janssen's understated performance made that fear believable, earning him 3 Emmy nominations and a Golden Globe during the show's run. Can you imagine a television audience today becoming this invested in one man's 4-year struggle to clear his name? The answer became clear on August 29, 1967. Roughly 78 million viewers watched the final episode as Kimball's story finally received closure, making it the most-watched television episode in American history at that time. The finale helped demonstrate that audiences wanted long-running television stories to end with real resolution. Janssen continued working steadily afterward, including the detective series Harry O. and numerous television films. His career, therefore, did not disappear with The Fugitive, although nothing matched Richard Kimball's cultural impact. David Janssen never needed exaggerated dialogue to command attention. His greatest strength was making Richard Kimball's exhaustion, fear, and determination feel completely real. And that quiet performance remains the reason The Fugitive still carries his name decades later. Scott Bakula. Scott Bakula spent years working in theater before television finally gave him the role that defined the first major chapter of his career. In 1989, he became physicist Dr. Sam Beckett in Quantum Leap, traveling through time and temporarily inhabiting other people's lives. The series ran for 5 seasons, earning Bakula 4 consecutive Emmy nominations for lead actor and a Golden Globe victory in 1992. Do you remember Scott Bakula first as Sam Beckett, Captain Archer, or Dwayne Pride? Unlike many actors permanently tied to one television hit, Bakula found another long-running science fiction role as Captain Jonathan Archer in Star Trek Enterprise, which aired from 2001 to 2005. He later reached another large television audience as Special Agent Dwayne Pride on NCIS New Orleans, leading the CBS drama from 2014 until its conclusion in 2021. By 2026, Bakula was 71 years old and still active. Looking back on Enterprise during Star Trek's 60th anniversary, he said he remained proud of Captain Archer, while emphasizing that there was still more work he wanted to do. No Archer revival was officially in development. More than 35 years after Quantum Leap, Bakula remains closely connected to television history without having stopped exploring new work. Lindsay Wagner. Lindsay Wagner's career changed dramatically when Jamie Summers was introduced on The $6 Million Man in 1975. The character proved so popular that Wagner soon Summers was introduced on The $6 Million Man in 1975. The character proved so popular that Wagner soon received her own series, The Bionic Woman. From 1976 to 1978, Jamie became one of television's most recognizable heroines, and Wagner won the 1977 Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Drama Series. But Wagner did not disappear when the Bionic era ended. She built a long second chapter in television, starring in dozens of TV movies and miniseries, including The Incredible Journey of Dr. Meg Laurel, I Want to Live, and Shattered Dreams. She also returned as Jamie Summers in 3 reunion movies between 1987 and 1994. Do you still remember the distinctive slow-motion running scenes that made Jamie Summers such a 1970s television icon? Away from acting, Wagner became increasingly involved in writing, teaching, humanitarian work, and programs focused on personal well-being. She nevertheless continued taking occasional screen roles, including appearances in Grey's Anatomy and Fuller House, and later participated in Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding universe. In 2026, The Bionic Woman celebrated its 50th anniversary, and Wagner remained actively connected with fans through interviews and special anniversary events. Now 77 years old, Lindsay Wagner remains closely identified with Jamie Summers. But the decades after that breakthrough reveal a career that continued far beyond one famous television role. Susan Lucci. Susan Lucci spent more than 4 decades playing Erica Kane on All My Children, turning one daytime character into a permanent part of American television history. She joined the ABC soap when it premiered in 1970 and remained with it through the end of its network run in 2011. Erica was glamorous, ambitious, impulsive, and often difficult, but Lucci gave her enough vulnerability to keep viewers invested through marriages, rivalries, betrayals, and constant reinvention. Off-screen, another story followed her almost as closely, the Daytime Emmys. Lucci was repeatedly nominated without winning, and by 1999, the losing streak had become part of her public identity. On her 19th nomination, she finally won Outstanding Lead Actress in a Drama Series. Do you remember watching the night? Susan Lucci finally received the Emmy audiences had waited years to see. Her later life brought a much more personal challenge. In 2018, doctors discovered serious blockages in her coronary arteries and inserted 2 stents. She required another cardiac procedure in 2022. Lucci turned those experiences into advocacy, working closely with the American Heart Association to encourage women to recognize symptoms and prioritize their heart health. At 79 in 2026, Lucci remains publicly active. Her memoir, La Lucci, was released in February 2020, reflecting on her career, family grief, and health. Cheryl Ladd. Cheryl Ladd faced an unusually difficult assignment when she joined Charlie's Angels in 1977. Farrah Fawcett had just left the hit series, and Ladd was brought in as Chris Monroe, the younger sister of Fawcett's Jill. Instead of simply copying the character she replaced, Ladd gave Chris a lighter personality and remained with the show until its final season in 1981. Before Charlie's Angels, Ladd had worked in music and provided the singing voice of Melody on Josie and the Pussycats. After becoming a television star, she continued acting in films, television movies, and series, including Purple Hearts, Millennium Las Vegas, Ray Donovan, and American Crime Story. Do you still remember Cheryl Ladd first as Chris Monroe, or from one of the many roles she played afterward? Unlike some stars of her generation, Ladd never completely disappeared from entertainment. At 71, she even competed on Dancing with the Stars in 2022. Her Then and Now story became especially meaningful in 2026. Ladd reunited with Kate Jackson and Jaclyn Smith at Paley Fest for the 50th anniversary of Charlie's Angels. During the event, she publicly revealed that she had previously undergone treatment for an aggressive form of breast cancer and was now cancer-free. On August 2026, Cheryl Ladd was 75 years old and still publicly connected to the television series that first made her a household name. David Cassidy. David Cassidy became a defining television and music idol of the early 1970s as Keith Partridge in ABC's The Partridge Family. His boyish face, long hair, and singing voice quickly turned a sitcom role into something far larger than television fame. Cassidy sang lead on I Think I Love You, which reached #1 in the United States, while his solo career produced hits, including Cherish and How Can I Be Sure. But the image audiences loved soon became difficult for him to escape. Teen magazines presented an idealized version of Cassidy, while enormous crowds followed him from city to city. He later spoke openly about feeling trapped by the teen idol identity created around him. Can you imagine becoming one of the most recognizable young men in the world before having the chance to decide what kind of artist you wanted to be? He continued recording, acting, and performing for decades, but his later life included serious problems with alcohol and declining health. Shortly before his death, Cassidy acknowledged that alcohol abuse had contributed to severe liver disease. David Cassidy died on November 21, 2017, at 67 after being hospitalized with multiple organ failure. His story remains inseparable from the extraordinary intensity of 1970s teen fame, a level of adoration that gave him everything professionally, while making an ordinary private life almost impossible. John Mahoney. John Mahoney reached television fame much later than most actors. Born in Blackpool, England in 1940, he moved to the United States as a young man and worked as a teacher and medical journal editor before seriously pursuing acting in his late 30s. Chicago's Steppenwolf Theater became his artistic home, and in 1986, he won a Tony Award for The House of Blue Leaves. His career changed permanently in 1993 when he was cast as Martin Crane on Frasier. As the retired police officer living with his sophisticated psychiatrist son Mahoney brought warmth, stubbornness, and dry humor to the series. He stayed through all 11 seasons and received 2 Emmy nominations for the role. Do you remember Martin Crane more for his arguments with Frasier or for the quieter moments when the family pulled together? After Frasier ended in 2004, Mahoney did not chase another long-running television role. He returned mainly to theater while making selected appearances in shows such as In Treatment and Hot in Cleveland. His stage work remained especially important to him, and he continued performing with Steppenwolf. Mahoney died in Chicago on February 4, 2018, at age 77. His manager initially did not announce a cause, while Steppenwolf later described his death as cancer-related. In 2026, 8 years after his death, Martin Crane remained the role most closely associated with a career that did not truly begin until middle age. Lorenzo Lamas. Lorenzo Lamas is an American actor, best remembered for 2 very different television heroes, the troubled Lance Cumpson in Falcon Crest and bounty hunter Reno Raines in Renegade. Born in 1958 to actors Fernando Lamas and Arlene Dahl, he entered show business with a famous surname, but still had to build an identity separate from his parents. His real breakthrough came with Falcon Crest in 1981. As Lance, the handsome and impulsive grandson of Jane Wyman's powerful Angela Channing Lamas, became one of the show's most recognizable younger stars. The role played directly to his looks and rebellious screen presence. But it also created a problem. Audiences began to associate him almost completely with the glamorous playboy image. He remained with the series throughout its 9-season run. Could Lorenzo Lamas have escaped the soap heartthrob label without completely changing his screen image? His career later became less centered on major television series, away from acting. Lamas trained as both a commercial helicopter and airplane pilot, and spent periods working professionally in aviation. Born January 20th, 1958. Lamas is 68 in 2026 and still makes public appearances connected with his long television career. Gregory Harrison. Gregory Harrison became a familiar television face at the end of the 1970s, first playing Logan in the TV adaptation of Logan's Run, and then finding his defining role as Dr. George Gonzo Gates on Trapper John M.D. Beginning in 1979, Harrison stayed with the medical drama for 7 seasons, establishing himself as one of television's popular leading men of the era. Do you remember Gregory Harrison most as Gonzo, or from one of the many television roles that followed? After Trapper, John M.D. Harrison continued working steadily instead of disappearing after one major success. His credits expanded across television movies, miniseries, films, and stage productions, including Falcon Crest, the Australian thriller Razorback, and the Broadway musical Steel Pier. Over time, he also became a regular presence in Hallmark productions. One of his most significant later chapters came on General Hospital, where he played Gregory Chase, a college professor diagnosed with ALS. Harrison's performance eventually brought him his first Daytime Emmy nomination in 2025, decades after his original television breakthrough. His career remained active beyond that role. He returned as Joe O'Toole in Signed, Sealed, Delivered to the Moon and Back in 2025. On August 2026, Gregory Harrison was 76 years old. Nearly 50 years after his early television success, he remained a working actor whose career had quietly survived changing audiences, genres, and generations. Ted McGinley. Ted McGinley has spent more than 4 decades as one of American television's most familiar supporting actors. Viewers may remember him as Roger Phillips on Happy Days, Ace Evans on The Love Boat, or Jefferson Darcy on Married with Children. His career began almost by accident. After a casting director noticed McGinley in GQ, he landed Happy Days in 1980, despite having little professional acting experience. That opportunity led to a remarkable run through established television hits, including The Love Boat and Dynasty. Because he often joined successful shows during their later seasons, McGinley eventually became the subject of jokes, suggesting his arrival meant a series was nearing its end. He has generally treated that reputation with humor rather than resentment. How many actors could spend decades being teased about their career and still return with one of their most loved roles in their 60s? That is what happened with Shrinking. As Derek, the relaxed and supportive husband of Krista Miller's Liz McGinley, initially had a relatively small part. Audience response helped the character grow, and McGinley later described the series as a highlight of his career. The comeback has continued. McGinley returned for Shrinking Season 3, which premiered in January 2026 and appeared with the cast at Paley Fest that April. Born May 30, 1958, McGinley is 68 in 2026. Rather than disappearing with the sitcom era that made him famous, he has found something rarer, a new generation discovering him without needing to remember Happy Days first. Erin Gray. Erin Gray was already a successful fashion model before television turned her into a science fiction icon. Born in Honolulu on January 7, 1950, she moved from modeling into acting and landed the role of Colonel Wilma Deering in Buck Rogers in the 25th Century in 1979. Gray's Wilma was presented as an intelligent military officer with real authority, helping the role stand apart from many female characters on television at the time. A few years later, she reached another large audience as Kate Summers Stratton on Silver Spoons, appearing throughout much of the sitcom's 1982 to 1987 run. Gray later said the show gave her a schedule that allowed her to balance acting with raising her son. Do you remember Erin Gray more clearly as Wilma Deering or as Kate on Silver Spoons? After her biggest television years, Gray continued taking film and television roles, but acting was no longer her only focus. She co-wrote Act Right, a manual for the on-camera actor, and became involved in teaching Tai Chi and advocacy related to domestic violence. She also founded Heroes for Hire, a company that arranges convention appearances and speaking engagements for actors and other entertainment personalities. Its current website still lists Gray as founder and CEO. In 2026, Erin Gray was 76 years old. Decades after Buck Rogers and Silver Spoons, she remained connected to the entertainment world. But much of her later work had shifted from starring on television to teaching advocacy and helping other performers connect with their audiences. Karen Grassle. Karen Grassle is best remembered as Caroline Ma Ingalls, the patient and resilient mother at the center of Little House on the Prairie. From 1974, her quiet performance helped give the series much of its emotional warmth-making. Caroline, one of television's most familiar mothers. Behind that comforting image, however, Grassle's experience on the series was more complicated. In her 2021 memoir, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, She wrote candidly about alcoholism, career insecurity, and her difficult working relationship with Michael Landon, who starred as Charles Ingalls and controlled much of the production. Grassle said tensions increased after she requested a salary increase during the show's early years, and Landon refused. She also recalled being hurt by crude jokes and by the atmosphere that developed between them. Would you have guessed that the actress playing one of television's calmest mothers was dealing with so much frustration behind the scenes? For years, Grassle distanced herself somewhat from Little House. More recently, she has begun embracing its legacy again. In late 2025, she joined former cast members at fan events and said she had gained a new appreciation for what Caroline meant to viewers. Born February 25, 1942, Grassle is 84 in 2026. Her story gives Little House on the Prairie another dimension. The gentle strength audiences saw in Ma came from an actress whose own life was considerably more complicated than the television home she helped create. Sally Struthers. Sally Struthers became a household name in 1971 as Gloria Stivic on All in the Family. Playing the outspoken daughter of Archie and Edith Bunker placed her at the center of a sitcom that regularly confronted politics, race, gender roles, and generational conflict. Her performance earned 5 Emmy nominations and 2 wins in 1972 and 1979. Do you remember Sally Struthers first as Gloria, or from one of the many roles she played after leaving the Bunker household? After All in the Family, Struthers briefly led the spin-off Gloria and built a career that extended far beyond one television character. She became a prolific voice actress, including roles in the Pebbles and Bam Bam show Tailspin and Dinosaurs. A younger generation later discovered her as the eccentric Babette Dell on Gilmore Girls. Much of her later career has taken place on stage rather than television. Struthers has performed extensively in regional theater and touring productions. In late 2025, she starred as Mrs. Peck in an old-fashioned family murder at George Street Playhouse. She also returned to television as Virginia Foldow in Netflix's A Man on the Inside, showing that she had never actually retired. 2026. Sally Struthers was 79 years old and still performing. More than 5 decades after Gloria made her famous acting, remained an active part of her life, rather than simply a memory of the 1970s. Barbara Bach. Anya Amasova was more than a conventional Bond companion. Introduced as KGB Agent XXX, she was professionally Bond's equal and initially his rival. She could obtain information before him, defend herself, and pursue the same mission independently. That dynamic with Roger Moore helped make the character one of the film's most memorable elements and gave Bach international recognition. Do you think Anya Amasova was one of the strongest Bond women of the Roger Moore era? Bach followed the film with roles including Force 10 from Navarone, but acting gradually became less central to her life. A major change came while making Caveman when she met former Beatles drummer Ringo Starr. They married in London on April 27, 1981, and celebrated their 45th wedding anniversary in 2026. Their life together was not always effortless. Both struggled with alcohol and drugs before entering rehabilitation together in 1988. They subsequently remained closely involved in charitable work, including through the Lotus Foundation, which supports projects involving addiction, health, homelessness, abused women and children, and animal welfare. For many viewers, she will always be Agent XXX. But Barbara Bach ultimately chose a quieter life, far removed from the constant pursuit of Hollywood stardom. Tanya Roberts. Tanya Roberts joined Charlie's Angels at a difficult moment in the show's history. In 1980, she was cast as private investigator Julie Rogers for the 5th and final season, replacing Shelley Hack. Although the series ended the following year, the role gave Roberts national exposure and opened the door to a more visible film career. She soon appeared as Kiri in The Beastmaster and took the title role in Sheena. In 1985, Roberts reached her biggest movie audience as geologist Stacey Sutton, opposite Roger Moore, in the James Bond film A View to a Kill. Do you remember Tanya Roberts more as one of Charlie's Angels, a Bond girl, or Donna's mother on that 70s show? Her career slowed during the late 1980s and 1990s, but television eventually gave her an unexpected comeback. Beginning in 1998, Roberts played Midge Pinciotti on that 70s show. She left regular appearances in 2001 largely to care for her husband, Barry Roberts, who was seriously ill, although she later returned for guest episodes. Barry died in 2006. Roberts largely withdrew from acting afterward. On December 24, 2020, she collapsed and was hospitalized in Los Angeles. After a confusing premature announcement of her death, Roberts actually died on January 4, 2021, at age 65. Her representative said a urinary tract infection had spread to several organs and her bloodstream, resulting in a fatal infection. By 2026, her television roles continued to introduce Tanya Roberts to viewers decades after her peak fame.